What was the latest technology when you were growing up? Like you said, you don't. Did you fly back and forth when you guys would
I
travel?
think we did train.
Okay.
We did train, yeah, or drove. I mean, it was just train and driving, not flying. My mother wouldn't fly, ever, but we still had dial phones, and you know, it was.
But I think all of us grandkids would remember that you guys introduced us to the first cell phone, and it was the giant brick that came with you everywhere that you guys went in the motorhome. Do you remember that car
No.
phone? It was this huge brick.
No,
Like
I don't remember that.
Sat in between the console. So I remember you guys had the first cell phone, but can you think of other technology that you guys had growing up? That was
Television. We had the first television set in the family.
Okay.
And it was about 12 inches, and the Kathy, San Marino, this little girl fell into a well, and all day, it was like a 10-inch big console thing, and Kathy's viscous they looked and looked and looked for her and trying to find her. When they brought her up, she had died. But it was there in San Marino, and that was the major issue. And the big deals on TV were Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. I Love Lucy. And even the pastor wanted to get out in time to see I Love Lucy. So it was totally different. I mean, wrestling was the big thing on TV.
McGee and Molly.
Yeah, but wrestling is what we always watched. And the news, and then I Love Lucy. I mean, there was very little on TV in those days.
Yeah.
And we were the first people in the family that had a TV.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
And you guys got bigger and bigger TVs.
yeah. And Al worked at the post office in San Gabriel, where he had worked before he went off into the service.
Okay.
And then he wanted to make more money for our family, and we were still in that house there that Del and Al still own, and they've rented it all these years to college students from Cal State, LA.
Wow.
And we had Al was recalled during the Korean War, so we moved to San Diego, and Nancy was born there at the Naval Hospital in San Diego. And we came back to our house there in Rosemead. 1488 Walnut? No, whatever it was right there.
You have a phenomenal memory that you can remember all these addresses.
Oh, that one I remember more from the ones in Minnesota and Iowa than I do then.
Wow.
Who was it called me?
I did.
You did? Did you find those houses?
We found them. We didn't end up having time, but that's one of the things that we want to go back
Yeah,
and do.
1434 Pascal and 238 South Saratoga.
Yeah. We looked them up. They're not far, but we just ran out of time.
Yeah, that was funny.
That's awesome.
Yep.
What was your first job?
I worked at a park in Alhambra at a hamburger stand where Del worked, just serving hamburgers. And then I worked at an In-N-Out Burger in Rosemead when I lived there with Del, also serving hamburgers. Oh, but the two of us during the war worked. I walked, I don't know how she got there, packaging frozen peaches to send to the troops during World War II.
Oh, wow.
During the summer we worked, both of us. So, we were very, very good friends, very close friends.
Yeah.
And I think we got 67 cents an hour or something like that. It was, but
Wow.
we worked, just package them and I don't know what we were doing, but it was.
Yeah.
So those were interesting times.
Tell me the story again about how you would ride your bike through the orange fields to get to your first teaching
that's
job.
long later. But Del was my maid of honor in our wedding, August
Were you hers?
13th.
Were you in hers? Were you her maid?
No, I was pregnant. I was 8 months pregnant with John, and her mother just didn't think I should be in that wedding. Well, I wasn't. That's okay. I was.
Wow.
I had gained a lot of weight that first pregnancy.
You know,
Remember, I was 19.
Remember your grandmother weighing 180 pounds?
No.
I weighed 180 when he was born.
Wow.
And it was, and we had a house, and my dad didn't approve of that, but you know, he didn't approve anything.
Of you guys having a house?
We bought a house. While I was in labor with John, Al went down and signed the escrow papers to close the escrow on the house.
Wow.
So that was, so I came home to go to that house.
Wow.
And it's still there. Dell and Al are still renting it out to Cal State LA students
Wow.
after all these years. So,
Wow.
yep. But it was interesting times.
And that's in Rosemead?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
It was on Edgewood Drive, 1418 Edgewood Drive in Rosemead. And we were there several years, and then we moved to Monrovia after Nancy was born. And then I had Carol.
But you had her in Placentia, right? Were you guys in Placentia then? Or did you move to Placentia after?
I'm not sure.
I wasn't with those, that's it, you, we're not on the, down here, did you?
Oh, no. No, we didn't move to Placentia for a long time.
Okay.
That was a long time. We were in Rosemead, and I had Nancy at the Naval Hospital, and then after he was discharged, we came back and took the two kids. John was 2 years old and Nancy was just a baby, back to my grandmother's and my aunt and uncles back in Illinois,
Wow.
and driving trip,
Wow.
and that was fun. And then we came back, and I had Carol 2 years and 9 months later. I don't remember. Anyhow, we moved from there to Monrovia.
Okay.
So, and Bob Gleason put a beautiful, we had on a corner lot with the garage in back, and he put a beautiful family room there with a fireplace and all. And we had a nice home there, which my father didn't approve of. But my father didn't approve of many things.
Okay.
He told me what a miserable life I would have, which I did not.
No.
We had a wonderful time.
And also, when the food would come cold, he would send it back.
Oh, every time we'd go to a restaurant, he'd send the soup back. Would you have the chef please heat this? It's cold. Every time.
Was he?
And there was a restaurant there on the corner of Balboa and Newport Avenue down there on the peninsula. Was a fish place. And he'd say, when did they quit putting the clams in the clam chowder? And it's cold, and send it back. Talk about an unhappy man. He was.
His whole life, do you think he was?
His whole life. But anyhow, I did not have an unhappy life. I had a happy life. And then Al went into the insurance business.
So this was after?
After Carol was born, when she was 6.5 months old,
Okay.
and I was breastfeeding her. And Grandma Gleason, Bob Gleason's mother, always came and stayed with the kids when we traveled. I think I paid her $5 a day, and she came and spent 24 hours a day taking care of the kids. And we went on a first trip was to Colorado Springs, and I had no problems whatsoever. And she took care of the kids, and I think it was a week's trip by train. Remember, this is before the age of all the planes and so forth. But we had a great time. And from there, we went to trips all over the world.
You did. You traveled a lot.
Yes, we did. We had Singapore, Paris,
China.
China. I think we did on our own, but and Australia, New Zealand, and Tahiti, and Fiji, and all those places we traveled, and it was all because Al was doing well. And then one year he was Man of the Year for Northern Life and Accident, and they called and told me, and they said, "Now don't say a word, don't tell him," and I didn't. And so when we went to Hawaii, he was honored by being Man of the Year. And I said, I always thought if I ever married another man, I'd marry an insurance man. Because we've had such a good time. And we did. We had a very good time.
Which trip do you think was your favorite?
Oh, gosh. We had so many. Paris was wonderful. We went up to Ireland, Scotland. I mean, we always extended the trips. And Singapore was wonderful. And Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji, and Tahiti. That's when Carol was a travel agent over there.
Okay.
Of course, that goes on a few years.
Right.
But we had a very, very good life.
You've seen a lot of the world.
Yep, yep. And I have no regrets on any of those things. But it was fun. And little dreaming that he would get sick and, you know, what would happen. But it was... and then Carol went back. Carol came home from Australia. She was going to go to Cal State Fullerton, and she says, Mom, what should I do? I said, well, Carol, you may never have an opportunity to work in Australia again, but you can always come back and go to Cal State. She was all set to go back to college. I said, you know, I'm a good example, or I'm an example to you in that I got my education after all my kids were in school. They were in junior high school and high school. And so she went, and she came home, and we flew over there while they were there together. And he was a sweetheart. Well, Peter is he's a sweetheart. He's my pet.
Well, tell them how when you went through the orange groves there riding
Oh.
a bicycle, and sometimes the wind would be so strong.
I'd have
that
to
you couldn't
walk.
ride the bicycle
Yeah.
and you'd have to walk back.
That was when we moved to Placentia. And I wanted to go back to school and get my education because I only had 2 years. And so I rode my bike. There was an orange grove just a few blocks down the road, and I had to go through there to get to the college. And it was just, I rode every day except when it rained. And we didn't have, it was very small. It was all in barracks.
Right.
It was all Quonset huts. And I was thrilled. My kids were all in school. Carol was in 4th grade. Nancy was in 7th, and John was in 8th. And I would ride my bike, and when the Santa Ana winds, which blow through a canyon, blew, I'd have to get off the bike and push it because I wore contact lenses, and I was miserable. So I'd have to push the bike to get it home. But that was one of the best decisions I ever made, was to go back to school. And it was a great opportunity. Very small school then.
Yeah.
Even the elephant races I went to, and yeah, they had elephant races. That whole corner there was a big field, and they'd have elephant races once a year.
Wow.
So when I graduated, my mom and dad went. I had a luncheon afterwards, but Al was taking his CLU, one of his CLU exams, and he couldn't be there. My dad had a fit. He thought that was just awful. My dad never, ever grew to like Al. But it was...
Was that a strain on your marriage?
No, because I didn't really worry much about that. But I just felt he was totally unfair.
And also later your mother was so dominant about you being with her all the time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. My mother wanted me there every day, all the time, but
Really?
yeah.
As she was devoted to her mother.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Yep. Yep. My grandmother died at 76, and she was an old lady. I mean, talk about, things were just different then.
Yeah.
Things were just different then. She had a gentleman friend, though, that she took care of, who'd been a FDA agent, and but he got sick, and my dear grandmother took care of him.
Wow.
And I think my grandmother was a sweetheart. My mother was just afraid of everything. She wouldn't fly. She wouldn't. She was. Jan told me that Phil had put the video of my mother's 90th birthday party that I had at the house there in Corona del Mar on DVD. And she was going to get it to me. I just talked to Jan today. I didn't know they put it on DVD.
Oh, okay.
So,
You've seen it.
Yeah, we did it. We did it too. So.
oh, did
Yeah,
you?
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
like to see it on DVD.
Yeah, we will do that.
But anyhow,
What was it, honey, that the time with your father and your mother that he had left there and left you and your grandmother and your mother and grandmother together? Your dad left, and then they finally got back together due to the fact that you were saying that
oh,
in the school that you never had a daddy.
yeah, but that was before my mother left and took me out to, brought me out to California. I was the only kid in the second grade that didn't have a daddy. And I know I've told you that before.
Yeah.
So she did go back to him. And that's when Phil was born. I was in fourth grade.
How much younger is Phil than you?
10 years.
10 years.
Wow.
And I almost didn't get to go to see him go pick her up at the hospital because the kid in front of me was doing something, and I had a pen. You know, they used to have desks with ink holes in them, and I took the pen and hit him in the head with the pen, and they weren't going to let me go to see my mother go pick up my brother from school.
You got in trouble.
I got in trouble. I was always in trouble. I was not a happy camper. But my dear, but I was very happy when Phil was born. And that was St. Paul. And from there we moved to South Dakota.
Okay.
And Mother and Phil and I were on the train to South Dakota. And my dad was not even there to meet us. She took a taxi to the house.
Wow.
He was out doing business. Business was his top priority.
What did he do for business?
He sold furniture. He worked for Chittenden and Eastman. It was a furniture
Oh, yeah. Okay.
company in Minnesota, and he sold wholesale to furniture stores.
Okay.
So, but that was,
Did he do that in California too?
no. Well, he owned a furniture store in Yucaipa for a while,
Okay.
and I don't know what else he did, but he was not a happy camper.
Hmm.
He went to the University of Wisconsin, and
He thinks a lot of it relates back to his youth,
Hmm.
oh yeah,
because of when he was in college, they never had any money, and he had to wait tables and so forth, and
In the
these other
cafeteria.
kids were taking and belittling him because of all of this, and I think it caused a lot of
oh yes.
a lot
Absolutely.
of condition where he didn't have confidence in himself.
That's
Right.
true. That's very true.
Interesting.
That's very true. But he used to take me. He'd come home Friday nights when Phil was a baby, and he'd take me to Hopalong Cassidy movies.
Aw.
I had a good relationship with my father at that
Okay.
stage in our lives. But I don't understand how he wouldn't communicate with my mom
Yeah.
that way. It was not but we had good times together. I remember he took me and bought me shoes, and they were suede shoes. My mother said, "That's the craziest thing you ever could have bought. Do you realize what's going to happen when it snows?" She was right, of course. They were ruined.
Right.
But I loved those shoes.
Right.
So, I mean, he tried to be good to me because he felt displaced by my brother. So it was an unusual relationship. But-
So it sounds like while your parents were together they did have a period they were separated, but you probably didn't learn a lot of your understanding about marriage from them?
No.
So where did you get that? Where did you and Grandpa have counseling together? Where do you think that you?
I think I learned from our friends,
Okay.
Jerry and Bob and their children, and all the other group in our Sunday school class. We learned a lot. That was the King's Couples was a wonderful group of young marrieds.
Mm-hmm.
We had a wonderful teacher. Boget. Well, I can't remember his first name. Bert? Anyhow, he just taught our class so that we were a group of young families.
So you kind of grew up in community.
Oh
together,
yes,
like that.
absolutely, absolutely.